to this lovely spring weather that we're having in Utah. I'm telling you, Utah weather just keeps me hopping. But welcome to March. Welcome to Clinical Track. We're so excited that you're here. This is, in my mind anyway, this has been a long time coming, having Sondra back, so I'm so excited about this. But before I introduce our presenter, we just want to remind everybody of just a few things. First of all, our code word for today, if you lose connection and you need to get back in and you want to email Gabby, the code word is safety. So write that down or put that in your little brain, but that's the code word for today. And so just email Gabby. As I always do, I will put that in the chat, her address, her email address. And so just email that code word to her. She'll get you back in. Hopefully you don't have any internet problems, but if it happens, there you go. So that code word is safety. And also, if you were in our training last month, you'll remember there were a lot of people in that training, and we kind of had this issue at the end where everybody was trying to do the evaluation at the same time, and it was kind of blocking it up. So yes, somebody is saying, yes, that box is there. It will go away when we get started. She's just got it up there to see everybody's faces and stuff, so it will go away. But anyway, for the evaluation, if at the end of this, if you try to fill that out and it's telling you it can't do it yet, just give it some time. Just copy and paste that link. I think that our trainings are just growing enough that if everybody's trying to do it at the end, it bogs up, So you have until Friday at 5 to get that evaluation submitted. So just copy and paste the link and do it later in the day or the next day. You've got time to do that. So we had, I think, Gabby, over 100 people or something like that emailed and were so concerned right after that training. And so, if you do have legitimate problems with it, then yes, shoot Gabby an email before Friday, but give it some time, because most of the people were able to get through and it was just fine. So just wanted to say that in case that happened again. Okay, I think I got everything. Okay, let's get going. Like I said, I am so excited. We had Sondra, gosh, I think it was like a year ago, if I remember right. It was about a year ago that Sondra came, and she trained us all on gangs, and it was an amazing training. It was so much fun and so scary at the same time. But it was really awesome. And we had so many people that said, bring her back, and we agreed. And so Sondra is back with us to, this time she's going to teach us about how to teach, how to work with the internet and how to help our kids be healthy with social media, and how to talk to them about that. And so right now, man, I'm telling you, it's getting worse and worse, and we really need to know about this. So we're really excited that she's back. She's so much fun, and she's a wealth of knowledge. And so I'm going to turn the time over to her, and she can introduce herself how she needs to today. So thank you, Sondra, for being here.
Thank you, Kelly. Thank you. Thanks everybody for being here. It's more than I thought, so I'm just going to not look at that little number, and we're going to pretend there's like 6 of you, and everything will be just fine. I've got some spots kind of timed in throughout the presentation for some question spots. If you have questions, you can throw them in the chat. I believe Kelly said there's like a Q&A section of the chat, so if you wanted to put them there, that's great. Or you can just pipe up when we get to those question spots. Kelly and Gabrielle will be watching for me through the presentation. So if something pertinent pops up that's pertinent to, what I'm talking about in the moment, we can go over that. So this guide is basically about raising youth in the modern era, in a life of screens, and how to make sure that our kids are healthy and safe. Let's see. Okay, so this is me. I have been in social work. I tried to do the math for right around 20 years now, almost 20 years. I'm older than I look, so yeah. So we'll just get that out of the way. But I've worked the gamut. I've worked with birth moms, adopting families, gangs, police departments. I've worked for and with a lot of agencies as well. DCFS, JJYS, probation, juvenile courts, police departments, adult parole and probation, the jails, the prisons. I've kind of been all over the place. So the information in this presentation is gathered from my experience at those agencies, my experience with those agencies, the conferences, the personal experience I've seen over the years. And just as a disclaimer, anything in here is not the legal opinion of any one of those agencies. It's my collection of information. So any of those agencies are not legally liable for any of the information herein. So the big thing is, Kelly said it's going to be fun. Well, she said gangs was fun and scary. This will be also scary. Me and Kelly were talking before everybody got on. Things are just getting worse. The internet is not going to go away. So we've got to figure out how to make sure our kids can survive in the internet land. I also understand that, especially in this area, there is a myriad of different values and goals, especially when it comes to these topics for children. So I'm going to try and address kind of the whole spectrum of values that you might have when it comes to children in this situation. Being the internet, being sexuality, consent, puberty, how you have those conversations. I'll try and address the whole gamut of where your values might fall. So let's get into what is scary. I would hope no one is like, the internet isn't a bad place for kids. It's a horrible place for children. Even in the last 2 years, reports of online enticement, and online enticement means an adult on the internet looking for a child for a sexual purpose, whether that's to share photos, to have a conversation, to find them in real life. But even just from 2021 to 2023, online enticement spiked by 300%. So we're 2 years past that now. I don't see that number going down. It's only going to be higher. And you may think, well, this is a worldwide issue, not our problem. In 2023, 8,000 roughly of those reports were able to be resolved in Utah. And that means that either the perpetrator or the victim resided in your state where this events happened. These statistics come from the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children. I didn't pull all their statistics because we could just go through that and be terrified for hours. But these online solicitation is a big issue that we're having, or the online enticement of children. So this just goes over what that definition is. This is a thing that is very common for our young kids to be dealing with. And a lot of times the parents don't even realize their children have been enticed online. The kid will say, I was on Roblox talking to somebody. That may have been an enticement encounter and the parent isn't even aware of it. So we'll go into that. Another big thing that's happening online right now is called sextortion. And what it basically comes down to is people are pretending to be someone who's interested in a juvenile, usually a teenage boy. They get pictures, explicit pictures sent to them. And then they say, hey, I'm not actually a girl from your school. I'm this person. And if you don't send me $500, I'm going to leak this nude to your school. I'm going to leak it to your friends' Instagram accounts. So it's sexual extortion. It's now just being called sextortion. How we deal with this, the main thing we do is we talk to kids. Let them know people will be asking for photos and it's not the cute girl in the thumbnail they see on Instagram. It's an old guy. Help them understand that it's coming from outside of America as well. A lot of it is coming from outside of America. So you have, these organizations looking for children to get money from in exchange for their images. Make sure the kids understand that the images do live forever on the internet. Now, luckily, we have a way to combat this, and I'll go over that. But a big thing that the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children is saying is we've got to stop trying or using the language with children. Don't send nudes because it's illegal. I am, culprit number one of that. I used to yell at my football team every Friday that nudie judies are a felony. Don't do it. But we need to try and change that language of just saying it's illegal, it's illegal, it's illegal. because that makes the child much less likely to come forward and say, I'm being victimized. Because if they know it's illegal, they say, okay, well, I broke the law in sending the picture and now I need help. Well, I don't want to tell because I'll go to jail. So instead, we've got to be teaching them how unsafe it is to be sharing images of themselves with people from the internet. And if you could, just for a second, put yourself in their shoes as a young teenager. Luckily, a lot of us didn't have to live through this. Some of us have. But if you're, if you're a teenage kid, you're talking to this really cute girl for a couple days. She sends you a picture and you says, come on, send one back, send one back. So you give in, you shouldn't, but you give in and you send one back. And now you have a grown man saying, I need $1,000 or this will be up at your school tomorrow. What do you do as that young child? This is happening. And unfortunately, we're losing some of those children because they see no way out of that situation. So we've got to have kids understand they can tell us if they've gotten themselves into an unsafe place. Make sure that's going to be the number one thing I kind of keep coming back to throughout this presentation is talk to the children, either the children you work with, the children you raise, the children around you. Make sure they understand they can tell you as either their parent, their therapist, their educator, their trusted adult, they can tell you if they've made a mistake and you'll help them out of the hole that they're in. Now, the sextortion is huge these days, and teen to teen sextortion is getting much bigger as well. A lot of it is what's being called revenge porn. So, the nudes were fine when we were together and happy, but you're in 8th grade, you're not going to be together and happy for more than a few months. And then you're with somebody new and they're mad about pictures in her boyfriend's phone. So she starts sharing all those pictures with everybody. So we've got to get kids to stop sending pictures of themselves to people on the internet, even people they know. This is one way that we're starting to combat the sextortion and the child porn situation. So this is called Take It Down. We can thank Taylor Swift for this, I think, because this all got really big after Taylor Swift was a victim of AI porn. And so she worked with Congress to basically make it so that victims of child sexual abuse material, so, your nudes going around, victims can have that information taken down from the internet for free. So this is just a screenshot from the website. At the end of this presentation, I have a list of resources, and this website is on there. But what's really great about it is you don't have to upload the image to get rid of the image, which used to be the case. Now they have all their little scientists, computer guys going through, and they make hash values that tie back to the photo, and it literally goes and takes it down from the internet. So these kids who made mistakes at 15, it doesn't have to haunt them for the rest of their life. They can actually get it taken down. It's been up for about 2.5 years now and has been very successful overall. But a lot of kids don't know it exists. So if you have a kid that's made a mistake, was caught up in something, look to take it down. Now, one thing we need to be aware of as adults is generative AI, so artificial intelligence, child sex abuse material. This used to be called child porn, just now it's being called CSAM because it's a broader definition and we're able to qualify more material as illegal material if you call it CSAM instead. But NCMEC is having a lot more CSAM going on, and what they're seeing is a lot of it is coming from overseas, but they're taking pictures from parent social media where you have a picture of your child. They take the face, generate it into child sexual abuse material, and then try and elicit money from that family and say, if you don't give us money, we're releasing this video of your child. Obviously, it's not a video of your child, but it absolutely looks like a video of your child. So this is where, as adults, we can be very aware of what we're posting online. Be very aware of your privacy settings. I'm horrible at technology, but I've learned the things I have to learn. And what's great is they understand, the people that are trying to combat this, they understand that those of us who are in the age group dealing with it maybe didn't start our lives with computers. So the videos, they make step-by-step videos of how to set the privacy settings on your Instagram to be safer. I'm talking step 1, open Instagram. Step 2, pick your face. Like, it is very, very Instagram for dummies, basically. And another thing I'll come back to a lot is Google it. Google it, how to make my Facebook safer, how to make my Instagram safe. You can't make Snapchat safer, get rid of it. Nobody needs it unless you're a drug dealer. I'll just say that right now. But generative child sex abuse material is another problem we're having online. And this is one where we really can, as adults, keep the children safe by either keeping them off, keeping young children off of our social media, or being very, very efficient with our safety setup so that only the people we know are seeing pictures of the kids. And even then, sometimes the people we know aren't who we think they are. So this kind of explains how we might be feeling about the internet right now.
Seems like an invasion of privacy.
Dude, if you think that's bad, go to Google Earth and type in your address.
So that's a solution I like, just throw it out. But in reality, I don't know if any of us could do our job without the internet, could do anything, pay bills without the internet, bank without it. So it's not going away. Unfortunately, we've got to figure out how to live with it. So some in-home safety measures. So if you're, working as a therapist and you've got parents who are trying to make their home safer, these are ideas you could give them. If you're a parent, you could implement these in your home. I'll say this and I'll say it again later on, but nothing is 100% guarantee. Obviously, we can't bubble wrap kids, put them in a bubble, keep them safe constantly, but we can do the best we can. So a good rule to keep kids safe on the internet is not letting them be alone with devices, not being alone with their laptops, with their phones. My future stepchild, I'll throw myself under the bus here, was in kind of a walk-in closet, just playing on mom's phone because she was being loud, and we're like, here, take the phone, go do something for a minute. I know everybody's done that. So she usually just watches Taylor Swift videos on YouTube, so it's fine. And then all of a sudden we could hear her talking. We're like, is she talking to herself? And I opened the closet door. She had downloaded Roblox on the phone in that amount of time and was talking to an adult, like phone call style over Roblox. And that was with us in the same room. She was just in the closet. And that's where I kind of had a heart attack. We snatched that phone away, had the long conversation that we'd had several times already. But it's a conversation that you have to have constantly. But a big thing you can do is not let them be alone with the device so that you can at least always hear what's going on. Another one, even for teens, especially for teens, charge the Chromebooks, the cell phones, the iPads, any of it in an adult's bedroom. Kids don't need their phones at night, and even for reasons outside of pornography or, creeps on the internet. It's keeping them awake all night. It's bad for kids. They're staying up on their screens all night. And one of the best ways that we can combat that is have it in an adult's room. Your teenager's going to argue with you and say, I need it for an alarm clock. You can introduce them to this really cool thing called an alarm clock. Those still exist. They can plug them in. They can be battery powered. They can get a little watch that beeps. Kids don't have to only use the alarm clock on their phone. Another way we can keep kids safe is use kid devices. Was there a question, Kelly? Okay, sorry, I thought I heard some noise. Okay. I don't endorse any company over another. The one I see the most, I think, is Gab. I think they might be the biggest, but I haven't found a safe phone that I don't like. And they're just great because they're very strict about the apps that can be downloaded. You can't send pictures over these phones. You can't take pictures. You just can't send them sometimes. So get a dumb phone for your kid that'll still look like they have a smartphone. They won't be left out. They won't be made fun of, but they'll be a little bit safer. Take the time to understand parental controls. Again, if you're not great with technology, Google it, and it'll give you step-by-step how to make sure my kid can't download apps without my permission. That's the big one you need to do, because apps is how kids they rarely go into Google Chrome to get into trouble. It's usually on apps. So if you can control the apps that are being downloaded onto your kids' phones, that's a big way that you can keep them safe. The apps to avoid, the list could go on forever. These are just the main ones that I've seen issues with. Snapchat may have some legitimate purpose I've yet to discover. If you're a huge fan of it, no offense to you or anything, I just have not found a use for a child that is not problematic. Kick is a new app, and it's being kind of, not that new, but it's being touted as like a child messaging service. But why do children need messaging services? And if we know that that's what it's for, then that means people interested in children for nefarious reasons also know that that's what it's for. So those are the people using it to talk to children. Omegle is an app where basically I'm just like this, and then it cycles and I talk to a random person in the world with their screen on, with their camera on as well. So you can imagine as it jumps from camera to camera around the world, not everyone is fully clothed. Not everyone is there for a good purpose. So some of these apps are very, very dangerous for your children to have. If your kid asks for an app you've never heard of, Google it. Say, is this app child safe? They're usually brutally honest. People might think Reddit is child safe. Reddit is full of pornography. Just be aware of what you're looking at. Another thing is kids are learning how to hide what they've got on their phone. So you've got to find the vaults. The most popular vault is a calculator. So the picture of the calculator on the left, that's actually a photo vault app. And it works just like a calculator. A kid can do math on it and everything's fine until they enter a code, and then it opens up a whole secret, basically another phone with different apps, different photos. So your kid should never have more than one calculator on their phone. Be aware. Don't blindly believe that a Chromebook is safe. I know the schools do the best they can, but a motivated child can do anything they want on almost any device, especially on a Chromebook. I've had kids access everything on a Chromebook, and I mean everything. So don't think it's safe just because it's from the school. Another big thing, the main thing, again, talk to our children, help them understand the internet is a dangerous place. There are adults on the internet who want to hurt children. I know when I grew up, we were told, don't talk to strangers, don't tell them, your phone number, don't give them your address. And kids are pretty good at that. Kids aren't dumb. They know not to tell someone where they live. But because of how much information about us is available on the internet, details that you wouldn't think could be used to locate you are out there. Voter records are searchable. So if you're a registered voter, most people, your address is searchable just based on that alone. So if someone's talking to your child, they can just ask small questions. Oh, who's your teacher? The kid's not going to think that's a problem. They'll answer. They'll find them by the school. So this little chart on the left here is really great. I think, Kelly, we talked about it. These slides are going to be available for everybody. So if it's really small and hard to see here, don't worry. It'll be available for you after. But this is a great way to help kids stay safe on the internet, help them understand that not everyone on the internet is their friend. I tell kids they shouldn't be talking to people on the internet they have not met in real life. That's kind of your baseline safety measures. This is me not knowing how to set this up, so I Googled, how do I prevent kids from downloading apps without permission? I Googled that, got this, so I screenshot it and put it here for us. This is the big one. If we can control the apps on their phones, either by giving them a kid-safe phone or by using parental control features, this is a way to help keep them safe on the internet. When we're setting this up, use pins they don't know. Don't use your oldest child's birthday. That's what they're going to be expecting. Use a brand new pin that your child can't guess. So this is one spot we have a spot. Are there any questions about internet safety that we've gone over?
There is a couple of questions. There are a couple of questions in the Q&A. The first one is on the take it down. You were talking about take it down. If people have downloaded nude pictures onto their computer, can it delete those pictures? If not, does take it down scan the internet periodically to get rid of those pictures if they pop up again?
So to the first part, I'm not sure if someone's put that on an external hard drive, I don't see how take it down could go in and get it. But take it down does assign a hash value to that image. And it does continuously search for that image to be reappearing online. So if they get it all down, somebody has downloaded it and re-uploads it, yes, it will pull it down once it's up again. I don't see them being able to get it off of like external hard drives though.
And then one other one, a question, let's see, a question I have for you and the group. Before allowing my older teenagers to get social media, IG, etc., I want to make sure they're well aware and educated about several things. Internet safety, influences in their algorithms, psychological messaging they will be constantly getting, critical thinking, this is a long one, critical thinking, physical and mental health concerns, etc. So I'm wanting to collect good resources to have them read, watch. So far I'm having them read the book Dopamine Nation. I'd love other resources. So I don't know if that's something you're going to go into or, you know.
We go into pornography later on, which is always everybody's favorite section to discuss. I think a lot of social media is not necessary for kids. If you feel like you absolutely must give your child social media, I'm not saying it's safe. So this is not me saying this is great and it's safe. The safest that I've found is the Instagram teen account. TikTok is not safe. Reddit is not safe. Discord is not safe. I get that you can't have your child be the only child that's not on the internet, but at the same time, they're not. They'll tell you they are, but they're not. But the safest that I've found is the Instagram teen accounts. And then at the end on the resources page, there are a few websites that have kind of learning lesson activities you could do with your child to kind of test their internet smarts, see how safe they may be on the internet. And I'll point those out when we get to those at the end. And that might give you an idea of what your child is or is not ready for when it comes to the internet.
You have just one last question. Joey's wanting to know why the school districts don't put better filters on the Chromebooks.
I think the schools do the best that they can with how many Chromebooks they have. And this is me again, being very bad at computers. I don't know if you could fully set up a firewall that a kid couldn't get through. But I've had a kid, right now I am a juvenile probation officer. That's what I do. So I've had a kid on my caseload who was looking at child porn on his Chromebook in the office, in the front office of his junior high. So with the firewalls they're using, it works most of the time, but the kids can work around it. I don't know if there's something that you really could use that would block out all kids, because some kids are geniuses with electronics and they're smarter than the generation above them, which I think is part of the problem. I would love if the schools could figure out a way to really lock down their Chromebooks, but kids can email each other nudes on their school email addresses. I've seen that happen. They can access pretty much any website they want. A motivated child can do that. Now, obviously, it's not easy. You have to learn how, but one Google search would probably tell a kid how to do it. So I don't know if there is really a way that they could actually lock it down.
I have a question also. So if you find yourself in a situation where you're being extorted and somebody's saying like, oh, well, if you don't pay me this money, then blah blah blah, I'm gonna release this picture. What are the procedural, the legal procedural things to go after that person, right? Like, is there a
So
way
you call the
like,
police.
who are you
Yeah.
calling? Yeah, like who do
Step
you
one, you
call?
call the police.
Okay.
The police will probably involve NCMEC, the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children. They may also involve ICAC, which is Internet Crimes Against Children, which are both, I think, FBI branch offs. I'll be honest, a lot of them right now are not coming from America. So we're talking months and months to track down these people back to their home countries of where it's happening, and then do their home countries care enough to work with us to enforce arrest warrants? A lot of people just aren't getting caught if it's outside of America. If it's inside of America, like if it's teen to teen sextortion, I've had a few girls on my caseload charged with sextortion. I have they're, kind of classified as sextortionists. So I have a few sextortionists right now. For children, obviously the legal system is different. But for adults, it is punishable with jail time. It is punishable with fines. I believe it's a crime that will get you on the sex offender registry. So if if the extorter is in our country or a close country, Canada, something like that, that we work very well with, there's a lot we can do legally. We charge it, we find them. But if if they're in a very far away, third world, not very friendly country, there honestly is not a lot we can do. So it's more preventative than reactionary that we're looking. I know that's a bummer. All right, I'll go ahead and keep going. You let me know if there's anything big. We're going to move away from the internet into puberty, everybody's favorite time in life. So while we're talking about it, everybody just kind of think back, put yourself back in puberty. Think about how comfortable you were with your body. Think about how comfortable you were talking with adults in your life. And let's get into puberty. I'm going to kind of fly through the puberty part. I know a lot of people here are professionals, therapists, teachers, things like that. And you may be very well aware of all this information. I took this from this Australian website that I really like. It's information that's available everywhere, but this is the place where it was most cohesively organized in a way that was easy to digest. When we talk about what's developmentally expected for a child, that doesn't mean you have to allow it in your home. This is where we're talking about where values may differ from family to family or from therapist to therapist, what you'll allow or be comfortable with a child participating in. So for young children, it's normal for them to explore themselves, but pretty much anything else is not. Sorry, I'm getting a little bit of feedback. I don't know if somebody's unmuted right there. Am I the only one hearing it? Maybe. It might be the voices. Okay. Let's see. Just a sec. See if we can. Okay. All right. So somebody is unmuted. If somebody could figure that out, that'd be fantastic. If you could go ahead and mute yourself. No judgment from me. Again, I'm horrible at internet, horrible at the computers. If you can't figure out how, I get it. Okay, so we're going to go through, talk about just real quick I say normal. By normal, I mean developmentally appropriate. It's expected at that age in their life. What isn't expected? So what we call problematic sexual behavior. And then how to address it. So with these really young kids, that's really young for therapy, the best thing you'd want to do is talk to a pediatrician. Babies this age should be very easily redirectable. You'll notice, when you're bathing a 2-year-old, they're very interested in themselves. They shouldn't be harming themselves. They shouldn't be so interested you can't distract them with bubbles. So just kind of be aware of that, because if problematic, it may mean that either there's something developmentally wrong or the child of whatever age has been exposed to something they should not have been exposed to. So for a baby this age, talk to your pediatrician. Now we've got our older kids. This is just before we're starting school. These kids are very comfortable in their bodies and they haven't gained shame yet for the most part. So these are your exhibitionists. Anybody that's raised a kid this age, keeping them dressed on the front yard is an Olympic sport at sometimes, but that's very developmentally expected for these kids. They don't understand, I can't be naked everywhere. It's also normal for them to explore the bodies of children that age and their friends. This is where you're going to find kids saying, show me yours, I'll show you mine. This is kind of where this starts. That is developmentally expected. If that's not okay in your household, and you should be redirecting it if it's in, public activities, things like that, but it should be easily redirected. You should say, hey, we're done with that. Let's go have a snack. And they should just switch right over and not have problems with it. If kids this age are trying to force other children into that type of play, that's problematic. Kids this age should not know what pornography is. So this is a good time to talk to kids about private versus public spaces, where we can be naked in a private space like the bathroom. We cannot be naked in a public space like kindergarten. This is kind of the main thing you're going to want to be teaching the kids at this time. I will always say, don't use shame as your teacher. You don't say, oh, well, that's embarrassing, or we just say that's not something we do in public. That's not something we do where other people can see. You talk to your kid about what's okay in public, what's okay in private. Again, if they're displaying problematic behavior that's still pretty young, talk to a pediatrician, but that you may also be able to start working with a therapist. They may also do some play therapy. If the child is a known victim, the CJC is great. They have great groups for kids this age to help them start working through whatever it is that this is a fun group of kids because they're, and I say fun very sarcastically, they're approaching getting ready for puberty. So they're going to be very interested in their own body. They think poop is the funniest thing that's ever happened. So that's all they're going to talk about. They're going to be very interested in their bodies and other people's bodies. We've got to look at, if the behavior becomes problematic, it's because they're harming themselves. It's because they're doing things in public. It's because they're not redirectable. Kids this age should not be viewing pornography. So if they're making persistent efforts to view pornography, there's something going on. Kids that age where you're having issues that you're not able to easily direct, that's where you're going to want to get a good therapist involved. As a therapist yourself, if you're not comfortable dealing with these topics, that's totally fine. It's not everybody's cup of tea. Have a list of therapists who you can refer your clients to if they're displaying problematic sexual behaviors. Kids this young will not be charged by the legal system. Be aware. So just if you're having a kid displaying, some forcing behaviors with other children, don't be surprised when the police aren't going to handle that. It's a 9-year-old. We need therapy. That's the main issue at that point. These kids, some 9-year-olds are starting puberty. So be aware that they just might be more involved with their body because they're starting puberty. Even if they're not, this is the good time to start talking to them about the changes they might be seeing. The school doesn't start till 5th grade. For me, that's a little bit late because some kids have already started. And if you start puberty without knowing that's what's happening, that can be very traumatizing. So talk to the kids. If you don't feel comfortable talking to the kids, have an adult that is safe, that can talk to the kids about the changes they're going to start seeing in their bodies. Help the kids. Sorry, I started from age 0. We're starting with consent and boundaries with kids. So we're reinforcing that at every step along the way. We'll go into that a little bit more later. So preteens or pre-puberty or very beginning of puberty, this is where things like masturbation are going to become a lot more common. And that's where we go into masturbation later, but we'll talk about, your family values, the home's values, of what works and what doesn't work for each home. Kids this age are starting to experiment with pornography, so just be aware of that, but they shouldn't be compulsively viewing it. The kids I work with, they all have displayed problematic sexual behavior, so they all complete what's called a sexual behavior risk assessment. And in that assessment, they ask about when they were exposed to pornography. Almost all my kids average between 8 to 10 years old is the first time they've been exposed to pornography. So it's not uncommon at all for kids this age to be at least seeing it at a somewhat regular interval. They may be seeking it out as well. So these are where, if you want to talk to your kid about what your family's values are, what's appropriate in the community, this is where you need to be able to have the uncomfortable conversations, or go to the library, get the books you need, go to YouTube. YouTube has great videos about, how do I have a healthy relationship? How do I make sure I have consent? Everything like that. If we're not comfortable having that conversation, reach out to professionals. If you are a professional and you're not ready for it, have a list of professionals who are capable of having those conversations. Teenagers are terrorists and I love them, but they are in the throes of puberty. So the hormones are very intense at this age. So it's very normal for them to be pretty in touch with their hormones and with their sexual development. So This is where we have to understand what's developmentally expected may not match up with what's culturally expected for the area that the child is living in. And so we have to make sure we're not using shame and fear to shape their sexual behavior. And we'll get into that a little bit later on. Kids starting around age 12, if they're having the problematic sexual behavior, if it's to the point it's harming someone else, that's where they could be involved in the legal system, starting around 12 or older. Our early teens, this is where kids at this age, they're getting close to being grown-ups. They're fully formed humans almost. So this is where we're having those real conversations with them. We're not using shame-based. We're being honest, talking about consent. If your family doesn't believe in sex before marriage, you can't just say we don't do it because it's wrong. These kids need a further explanation. So that's where you can tell kids, we have goals in our family. We want to work on self-regulation. We want to work on self-mastery. We believe in having, that connection with just one person. Explain to the children why the goal is what it is, and that can be very helpful for them in achieving that goal or deciding whether that's a goal that they want for themselves or not. Kids that are older that are exhibiting problematic sexual behavior most of the time need a specific therapist, a therapist trained in specific practices to work with that. In Utah, that's called NOJOS therapy, NOJOS. If there are NOJOS therapists here, I love you. Hello. If there are therapists here that want to join, that'd be amazing. We need more. And I'll direct you to their website later on. But so if you're a therapist working with a 14-year-old who's displaying some real problematic sexual behavior, it would probably be good to tie in a NOJOS therapist to help them through the situation. Our late teens are basically adults. So we need to understand that they have adult bodies that are ready to do what adults do. So pretty much any healthy, regular sexual activity is developmentally expected for these kids. Again, forcing others to partake, compulsive behavior, public behavior, that's what's problematic. Again, consult a NOJOS therapist. And just have those open dialogues with the conversation, those open conversations with the kids. Speaking of pornography, all right, so for my pornography information, I compiled most of it from this really, I like him a lot. He's a professor at BYU, Dr. Willoughby. And so because he works at BYU, he's very familiar with kind of the culture we live in and how pornography ties into that culture. Like I said, most kids are first exposed to pornography between 8 and 10 years old. I know that's horrifying to think of, but it's true. If they're on a device, they're going to see pornography. If they're not on a device, their friend whose parents aren't as internet savvy may send their, 5th grader to school with an iPhone, and at recess, he's going to show all his friends what he found. So that may be the child's first exposure to pornography. What we need to do is start talking to them pretty early and obviously remain age appropriate. Don't talk to an 8-year-old about the mechanics of it or anything like that, but help them understand that they might see some things that make them feel uncomfortable on the internet and they can tell you about it. That's the big thing. If a kid sees something that scares them, that makes them feel things they don't understand, if they don't have an adult they can talk to, they're going to figure it out themselves. And in Utah, pornography is the #1 sex ed resource of teenagers, which is devastating. The adults should be the #1 sexual education resource for kids. So we need to improve the way that we're doing things. I know the education system is what it is. But as the other adults in the kids' lives, we need to say, you can ask me questions if you have questions. You don't need to Google it and get lost in that nightmare. But the big thing we need to help these kids understand is pornography isn't real. It can give them a very warped idea of what their life is going to look like. So we need to help them understand it's not real, it's make-believe. You can't just tell kids pornography is evil, pornography is bad. You need to help them understand that it could develop poor habits in their life. It can desensitize them. It can ruin, future relationships because they won't understand what a real relationship looks like. If you're in a household where a child viewing pornography is not the end of the world, that's completely fine. Make sure if you know your child is viewing pornography or the child that you're working with is viewing it, make sure they know they can tell you if they see something that makes them uncomfortable. Because I don't know if you've ever kind of scrolled through TikTok, you watch one video and then it shows you another, and then it shows you another, and you're not even really choosing what you're watching. And a lot of pornography sites are set up the same way. So a 16-year-old may go onto the site for one video and then just be shown more videos, to where they're seeing something they didn't seek out, and it's confusing to them, it's scary to them. Help the kids know they can come talk to you. They're not going to be in trouble. You may be dying on the inside, but you're going to handle it well on the outside and have that conversation with them of, yeah, that isn't normal, or, you know, that's not what most people do. Help the child not be afraid of what they're seeing. So the person that asked about how do we know if kids are ready for the internet? This is a big test we can do. So the two ads on the right, they're both for makeup. You have your ad on the top and your ad on the bottom. You are ready for the internet when you can 100% of the time guess which one of these takes you to pornography. Because I'll tell you, one of them does. And I'm not talking about you click it and it says the site you're about to enter is explicit. Verify your age. Yes, I'm 18. No, you click it and it is pornography. So everybody just take a minute within yourself, guess which video is safe. All right, if you picked the top video, the viral sponsored video, you are watching pornography now. So that's how easy it is for kids to see. So when people say, well, how are 10-year-olds seeing pornography? It's right there. And so you're upset as a parent, you report that ad. That's a Facebook ad that was real. It's gone now. But you report that ad to Facebook and Facebook takes it down. So the company goes and changes 2 letters in the code and it's right back up because now it's a different ad, but it's not. So this is how kids are being exposed, is it's very difficult to know when they're going to see it. I could have put up 1,000 other things, ads for LED lights. So I know for some reason kids like to have epilepsy lights in their rooms and they think it's super cool. So on Instagram, there's an ad for LED lights and you click it, porn. So kids, if you're giving them social media, they need to understand pornography's out there. They need to understand they can come tell you if they saw it. They're not going to be in trouble. Why would a kid be in trouble for picking the wrong ad? It doesn't make any sense. So they need to understand they're not doomed, you know, no matter what happens. Sorry. So Dr. Willoughby gathered these statistics. 97% of teen boys report that they have at least seen pornography. 97% is basically all. And if you think about how many might lie and think they're going to be in trouble for saying they saw it, it's probably higher than 97. And it's only going to go up. That's almost all teen boys have seen pornography. And even almost 80% of teen girls have seen pornography. And it makes sense. She's like, oh, I want to learn how to do my eyeliner. Whoa, that's seeing pornography. So I don't know if I've hammered it in and hammered it home enough yet. It is out there. The child will see it. We must prepare them. In Utah, our young adult males, over half of them use pornography in the last year. So Utah is not a zero porn state. I know Pornhub, the other apps have been taken down, but they haven't been. Get a VPN and it's back. Utah is a little bit different, where when they did the survey, LDS women do have a very low pornography usage compared to the rest of people surveyed, even other religious women. But other than that, it's no different. The men are right up there with everybody else. In our state, men who consider themselves religious, about half of them use pornography monthly. What I thought is that across America, about 1/3 of coupled individuals view pornography together. So it's extensive, it's here, it's not going anywhere. We've got to figure out how to work with it. So the ATSA website is the Association for the Treatment of Sexual Abuse. It's what we use to help kids with problematic sexual behavior. And I like this because they say, yeah, the goal may be no pornography, but that's not really a realistic goal in this climate we live in. So the best that we can do is educate and make sure that the inaccurate assumptions in pornography are addressed. We need to help the kids understand that what they're going to see isn't real, it's not safe, and it's not what they should expect. And then what we need to be teaching kids is self-regulation. So if they want to abstain from pornography, we want to teach them skills of time management, self-control, urge control, instead of just don't look at it, because that's not going to work. It's out there. They're going to see it. So we have to help them prepare for what they're going to do when they see it, and shape their values around pornography. Good news, it's not always bad for people to see. When I say children, I'm not talking about 12 and under. For young children, pornography is bad. It's pretty much always harmful because they're far too young to understand what they're seeing. But for teenagers, it's not always harmful. If a teenager is using pornography once a month, once every couple weeks, there's no evidence from research that it's causing any long-term effects on the person. If they're using it occasionally, so weekly, bi-weekly, it can cause some unrealistic relationship expectations. It can cause some concerns about their own future performance, or their own body image issues, or it could lead them to have poorer satisfaction in their future relationships. But other, not the kind of big scary monsters that we hear of if kids view pornography, they're going to be perverts. There's just no research for that. Compulsive use. Now, when I say compulsive, we're saying constant, like they should be in math, but they're in the school bathroom looking at pornography. Or pornography addiction is very tricky because right now there is no DSM diagnosis for pornography addiction. So you kind of have to just look at the addictions, criteria for any other situation. It has to interrupt daily life. They have to be able to not control how much they use it. So using it even though they've tried to stop. And I'm not talking about once every 6 months. That's not addicted to pornography. I'm talking if we're using it daily, even though we're trying to cut down or stop usage. That's where you are seeing harm. A lot of it is depression. If they're younger, when they start this compulsion, that's where we may see the altered brain chemistry, and they may participate in riskier sexual behaviors, but not always violent or predatory sexual behaviors. There's very little evidence that pornography use increases basically the risk that they're going to be a sex offender in life. Pros and cons. I had to put some pros because the research shows there are some pros for teenagers. That helps them understand their own bodies. If you have a teenager that's not like everyone around them, they can sometimes see themselves and say, "Oh, okay, so I am a little bit normal. I guess that's normal that I feel that way." So it can help a child just feel more comfortable with themselves and who they are. Obviously, there are a lot of cons, and we could go on what the cons might be forever, but we need to be realistic about what they are. Like I said, they're not going to be sex offenders. They're not going to be, brain dead, but be realistic about what the cons of pornography are. And if you're honest with a child, and realistic, they're going to appreciate it and listen to what you say a lot more. Another part that plays into this is the type of pornography that kids are seeing. So I know it's a little bit hard to see, but so this is pornography viewed by teens. Actually, we'll do the graph on the left first. So this is just of all the pornography on the internet, which is a lot. Over a third of it demonstrates violence against women in some way, shape, or form, either choking, slapping, hitting, things like that. And most of the time it shows that the woman enjoys that. So that's a problem that pornography can create in teens, is it creates a false belief that women are aroused by being harmed. So that's something we need to be talking to our kids about, saying this is not true. This is not what women like. You should not be hitting women unless they are asking you to hit them. And even then, let's not do that as teenagers because that's a little bit advanced. 5% of all pornography is non-consensual sex. So we need to help kids understand they might see that even if they're not trying to. And 10% is incest themed. The step parent, stepchild that's out there. And then even full incest porn is out there. So there's a lot of pornography that is outside of what a child would expect to see, I think, when they go on and see. What teens in our state have seen, a third of boys have reported seeing some sort of violence against women in the pornography they've seen, and about a fifth of girls have seen that. A 10% or higher of them have seen rape content, whether they intended to or not. What a lot of kids are seeing, and I've had a lot of kids on my caseload that have been charged with this, because technically anyone under 18 in pornography is child sex abuse material. It is sexual exploitation of a minor. But you'll get a lot of 15-year-olds who search for 15-year-olds. So it's what I call peer porn. They're wanting to see themselves, basically. It's not healthy and it's not great. But over 30% of teens have seen someone their age in pornography. As far as actual child pornography, or, you know, the young children, about 5% of kids are seeing material. So if you're okay with pornography in your house, that's great, that's fine. But help them understand it's not all equal, and they're going to see some things, whether they tried to or not, that's going to make them uncomfortable. And you have to keep the lines of communication open. They have to be able to say, I saw this, I didn't feel good about it, I don't like it, I can't stop thinking about it. At that point, therapy may need to get involved, no-dose may need to get involved to help them kind of re-regulate themselves.
Hey, Sondra,
Yes,
I have a question.
go for it.
In that last slide where it showed girls higher than boys when it comes to rape and sexual violence. Do you think that might have anything to do with maybe something that they've experienced? Maybe, you know, a sexual act on them, and they are, you know, seeking out to see if is that really what happened to me? I'm just curious if there's
I could see that side of it is they were harmed, so they're Googling to see what it looks like when that happens from the outside. The other thing I thought of on that is where it says sexual violence. Again, if you look at how much of pornography depicts violence against women, a boy may not rate a video where a woman is slapped as sexual violence, where a girl may see that as sexual violence because the viewpoints of what that act are different. So I think it may be trying to see yourself in the material, or the different viewpoints of what choking is. Basically, a boy's like, oh, well, girls like that, and a girl says, I don't think I'd like that, so she sees it as violent, if that makes sense. Now, in our area, a big thing we've got to, you know, the kind of two clashing titans are pornography and religion. And this is all religion. Dr. Willoughby studied all the main religions in our area. The biggest issue with pornography is when kids are viewing it, there's a moral incongruence. And that's what's causing the negative feelings about a child, that a child feels about themselves. So it's not the pornography itself that's causing them to be depressed. My internet connection is unstable. This is tragic. Okay, tell me if I die. That's not good news. Okay. So if a child is viewing pornography, the pornography may not be the issue. The issue may be they're like, I'm evil. Oh my gosh, I can't believe I can't stop doing this. I'm a horrible person. I'm a bad person. So a kid who's constantly giving themselves that message, and who may be receiving that message from outside sources, that's where their big depression is going to come from. That's where their real functional issues are going to come from. Yes, it's the pornography, but it's more that it doesn't match who they believe they should be. And then it's kind of that self-fulfilling prophecy, where someone who views pornography is sad and depressed and hates their life, and then the kid is sad and depressed and hates his life, but it's not for the reasons you think. So we've got to fix the way we talk about pornography. We can't just say it's bad and it's evil. We have to explain why it could be negative for the child. We have to say it harms your perception of relationships. It can be confusing. Your brain isn't ready to handle what you're going to be seeing. What I thought was really interesting is when they surveyed religious men, so men who report themselves to be religious, they almost all think they're addicted to pornography. The rate was 340% higher than what it actually probably would be. And again, that's hard, because what is the criteria to be addicted to pornography? It's hit and miss because there is no diagnosis. But if you look at where your pornography use affects many aspects of your daily life where you're viewing pornography at work, you're viewing it at school, you're missing family events to view pornography. That's when you're actually looking at what probably would be an addiction. But a lot of these men who see themselves as religious, if they view pornography twice a month, they say, yeah, I'm addicted to pornography, where that's just not the case. But if you see yourself as a porn addict, the messages you're giving yourself are not great. So these people that are not addicted but think they are much harder on themselves. Another interesting thing that came from this area, from Utah, is that when surveyed, religious women stated that if a man had viewed pornography at one point in his life but doesn't anymore, so say a potential partner or spouse viewed pornography from 15 to 17, the women see them half as likely to be good marital partners. So if the women are getting that message, the men are also getting that message. So they're seeing themselves as potentially poor partners because of an experience with pornography in their life. So the main issue really it's the messaging around it that's causing a lot of the emotional issues for our teenagers dealing with pornography. Obviously, there are some that are viewing it in public, viewing it constantly, then the pornography itself is the issue. But we've got to fix how we talk about pornography to try and reduce the shame and guilt. Am I going to do the joke? Pornography and masturbation, got to do them together because they usually go hand in hand. So the same as pornography, masturbation it's out there, it's going to happen. And depending on the values of the home the child lives in, it may or may not be acceptable in your home. But you need to understand that even if it's not something that you're open to in the home the child lives in, it may happen. When it's problematic is when a child is harming themselves, when they're masturbating to injury, or like with pornography, if they're just doing it constantly. They can't stop. They're missing school. They're not sleeping at night. They're skipping football practice because they're just going to go home and do that by themselves. So when it's problematic is when it's causing negative effect to the child's life. And a child needs to understand public masturbation is illegal. I have a lot of kids who are on probation for masturbating in public. They may not understand that it's illegal, but it is illegal. And a school bathroom is public. So masturbating in a school bathroom is illegal. For anybody that needs to know that or needs to tell that to the children they work with or raise, it's illegal. And it's also unhealthy. That's a place children, if you're raising children or working with children and you're telling them, masturbation's developmentally normal, it's appropriate, go for it. They need to understand that they need to be doing it in appropriate places. And that's a place where there's a lock on the door and other people are not going to be coming in, coming out, seeing, hearing, anything like that. Another issue that's happening with kids masturbating in school bathrooms is they're getting that would be the good way to do it. If somebody saw and went and reported it, they're getting recorded. One boy will go into the bathroom, hear that that's what the other kid is doing and put his phone under the stall, record it, airdrop it to 300 kids in the school. And then you've got a sextortion case on top of a public masturbation case. So it's all around no bueno if we're doing that in public. If abstinence is the goal, that's great. But we need to, again, not use shame or fear-based. Promote the self-regulation, promote coping skills, self-esteem, promote scheduling their days so where they're busy to avoid, what you may view as a time-wasting behavior or something like that. Help them outside of, we don't do it because it's gross. That's not going to work for your kid. And then if they do masturbate, they're going to feel gross about themselves and it leads to that, self-fulfilling prophecy. But also help them understand the body is going to do what the body needs to do. So if a teenage boy is not masturbating, they're going to be having nocturnal emissions. Help them understand that that's fine. They didn't break their goals. Just help them know, okay, clean up, go back to sleep. It's not an issue. All the kids that I work with, I can easily say all. When it comes to healthy sexual activity, what I like to help the kids understand is it has to include the right person, place, and time. All the kids I work with have missed one of those, one or all of those, to have their problematic sexual behavior. So, you know, if the right person is just that person, one person, just you, that's great. But we still have to have the right place and time. And the right place is private, and time is when you're not going to be caught. So help the kids understand that they need to have the right person, place, and time to have appropriate and healthy sexual activity. So puberty was fun. It's going to get worse from here because we're going to get into sexual abuse, but puberty pornography questions. I can see if I can get the chat open.
There was, let's see, there was something in the Q&A. Just, do you know of a website that lists the research in this area? I think it was back when you were showing the, you know, the information that what do you call
Yeah,
it?
for
The graph.
pornography. So this is a study. Yeah, I got it from a study that Dr. Willoughby did, and he did a presentation on it. I believe he is compiling all his research currently into what will be, you know, kind of a released peer study. So I don't believe he has his study out yet. As soon as he does, as soon as he's got that in, you know, an article or he's got his website up, I'll send that to Kelly, and she can send that out. But I don't think Dr. Willoughby's research is all succinct in one location yet.
Yeah, I just saw that somebody put in the chat about Fight the New Drug and that they've got great research, you know, resources.
Yeah, the pornography. Yeah, that is a good one too as well.
Yeah.
That's a good one.
Let's see. How do you create safety for kids to talk to parents about masturbating questions or concerns? Masturbation questions and concerns.
Okay, so I'm guessing that's as a therapist, how do you help parents be ready to talk to their children about masturbation?
That's how I took it, yeah.
So that can be very difficult if the parents were raised in shame-based homes, because as a parent, they're still holding on to that masturbation is gross, masturbation is wrong. So that may be the angle they're coming with. So the number one thing to do would be to talk to the parent to reduce their own shame, to reduce their own discomfort. I'll be honest, 20 years ago, I wouldn't be comfortable sitting here talking about masturbation with 300 people. But you've got to get to the point where it loses its intensity, especially for the parent. Because if the parent is talking to the child and they're like, masturbation's fine, the kid is gonna hear the words, but they're gonna see the message. So you've got to work with the parent to reduce their own discomfort around the conversation. And I think a lot of that just comes with time and with practice. I don't think she's here, so I'll blow her up. My sister has 3 boys. When she caught her oldest son masturbating, there was yelling, there was screaming. She was traumatized. He was traumatized. I had to drive over at late at night, talk everybody off the edge, and it was a situation we all remember to this day. And he's a firefighter now. He's a grown man, and he'll still talk about when his mom caught him and how horrible it was. And so I worked with her. We talked about, okay, it's fine. Like, do you not want him doing it because it's gross or because of values? And so we talked about her discomfort with it. I talk to her constantly, and, you know, if the boys are going to be masturbating, okay, let's talk to them about when you're okay with it, where it's appropriate, how they need to clean up, things like that. So when she caught her 3rd son masturbating, she slowly backed out of the room, shut the door, went into the garage, got in her car, shut the door, and then screamed in terror. So for me, I call that a win. She's still, I mean, it's never going to be something you're thrilled about talking to your children about. But she did great. And then the next day she said, hey, you need to remember that if you're going to be doing things private in your room, you need to lock the door. So for me, it was night and day. So, and what I see the big change in that situation was having those conversations over those years of reducing her shame around the topic, reducing discomfort around the topic. That's the biggest thing you can do with parents is, if they're not okay with it, is say, okay, well, what were you taught about masturbation? What were you taught about pornography? Okay, how does that make you feel? Do you want that to be the same message you give your child? What relationship do you want with your child? Do you want them to be able to come and talk to you if they've got a concern, if they have a worry? Um, it's really helping the parent understand that their discomfort is not something they want to pass on to the child, and getting them open to the idea of having the uncomfortable conversations.
Exactly. We do have another one that just came into the Q&A. This is kind of more of a situational, thing. It says they're just talking about how to support the parents of a young child, age 7, who has viewed hours of pornography and now imitates sexual behavior while playing with dolls and teaches a younger sibling. And then they added that the child now has parental filters and better supervision when using technology. But yeah, working with that situation.
Good. That's a lot. And that's why we've got to be very careful, because when they see it that young, it does cause some intense developmental issues. It blurs the lines of what's acceptable, what's appropriate. So how to support the parents in that? I mean, I've never had a 7-year-old because kids that young don't get charged. So I could say kind of the most hopeful thing is just with children in general, with the children I work with, is kids with problematic sexual behavior are not shown to carry that behavior into adulthood. So for me, if that were my child, a concern I would have is my child broken now? Are they going to have this behavior throughout life? With the right therapy, with the right treatment, with the right intervention, research shows that kids with problematic sexual behavior don't carry it on in their life. So I think that would be the main thing, is to let them know that all hope is not lost. Their child is not doomed forever. But I would have very strict safety measures in place in that home, where what I call, like some of the kids on my probation, I have them on what I call thigh-to-thigh screen time. So they can only use a screen if there's an adult sitting right next to them, if an adult is thigh-to-thigh with them and can see and hear the screen, just to ensure that that situation is stopped. Obviously make sure that 7-year-old is in therapy, and a kid that young is apt to reenact what they've seen. So ensure they are never unsupervised with other young children, to make sure that they're not sexually reacting on other children. At that point, it wouldn't be sexually offending, it'd be sexually reacting, and there is a difference. But the main thing would be that all hope is not lost, that child is still very young, very malleable, and with the right interventions can be completely successful and healthy later on in life. That'd be the best I can do. I don't work with a lot of 7-year-olds, and that seems pretty intense. I hope, and that's even too young for no-jos. I hope they have a fantastic therapist. And I would say make sure the parents have their own therapist. When I go into the sexual abuse category that we're about to jump into, a big thing is make sure everyone is getting treatment, not just the own child, not just the child with the problematic behavior or the victim child. The parents need to be in therapy as well, because they're going to have big feelings about what's going on. And they do need a place where they can let those out without it affecting the child.
We've got a couple more. Do you want to
Yeah,
take it?
go for it. Yeah, have at it.
And this is just another situation, so kind of, but just a little bit older. Alyssa says that she has a friend with an 11-year-old daughter who will spend hours touching herself. She's had conversations about appropriate places to do it, but she would spend all day doing it if she could. She's not easily redirectable. She's just wondering your thoughts on that.
Check with a physician. That's like the first step I always say, is check with a physician, have them have an evaluation, make sure there's not some sort of nerve issue going on. Like maybe there really is an itch that's always there and it's as simple as a nerve problem. Have them evaluated to rule out a medical reason for it. And then at that point, I would get a therapist involved, because if they're not easily redirectable, like obviously kids participate in masturbatory behaviors because it feels good. But at some point, it's going to stop feeling good. They're going to be harming themselves with the behavior. And if we can't redirect them, we've got to pull in the professionals. 11 years old, that's old enough, I think, for some no-jos therapists. And if you're not familiar with the no-jos program, it currently stands for, so in the beginning, it was Network on Juveniles Offending Sexually, but they've changed the language because research shows that, kids are not sex offenders. So it's now the Network on Juveniles Obtaining Safety. And I would even say that family could go to the NOJOS website. NOJOS has different categories based on the severity of the behavior a child is involved in. And level 1 is really great. It's kind of just it's what sex ed outside of Utah is. So it's teaching consent, it's teaching boundaries, it's teaching self-regulation. And at 11, it may not be a bad idea to put that 11-year-old in some individual NOJOS level 1 therapy, just to see, you know, if she just needs education on the situation, or, you know, if in that therapy she discloses some events that might explain her situation as well. But I think 11, if you get a good NOJOS level 1 therapist, I think that would be appropriate.
That kind of answers, I mean, the next question is about treatment and therapies for pornography or inappropriate sexual behavior. Also, we've got in the chat, Heather Williams, that is talking about PSB CBT for kids who are 7 to 12. So there are some, you know, modalities out there that are specific to that, which is helpful to know. So great. I think we're good.
So let's move on to sexual abuse, what everybody's here for. No. So this is what I deal mostly with. Well, I deal with pornography issues a lot, but most of what I deal with is sexual abuse. So most children know their abuser. So I think we're all kind of aware of that now, where the stranger danger era has passed, where it's watch out for the man in the bushes. Now it's watch out for the man in the backyard or in the living room. But what's interesting that I think a lot of people haven't realized is that up to 50% of children who are sexually abused are abused by other children. And when I say children, I mean someone who's a legal minor, so under the age of 18. So it's very common for sexual abuse to happen at the hands of another child. The numbers are horrible, 1 out of 4 girls and 1 out of 13 boys. And as we all know, reporting numbers are off. A lot of people don't report, so it could be higher, which is horrible. Sexual abuse across my district is evenly distributed between rich and poor, all races, all classes. There's not one group that has it more or less than anyone else. So no one is immune from this. So just be aware, your children do need to be protected from other children. Let's see, come on. There we go. Okay, so how do we make the world and our lives and our home safer? Again, the number one thing is talk to the child. This is where we used to say, you know, good touch, bad touch, but that can get confusing because sometimes bad touch feels good, and that can be confusing to a child. So make sure from the time we're talking to kids, you know, so when they're born, that they understand stop and go touches that they can say yes to, touches that they can say no to. I know a lot of an older generation, like my grandparents' generation, don't love it. But a lot of people my age and younger are raising their children to where you don't have to hug grandma and grandpa. You don't have to give them a goodbye kiss. And I think that's great that we're teaching children that. When I leave my nieces and nephews, I say, can I have a hug or a high five? And they can choose to give me one, both, or neither, and it's fine. And it changes every day depending on their mood. And so that's what we've got to be teaching children. Talk to children that they are in charge of their body. And then talk to them and let them know that if something has happened, they can tell you and they will not be in trouble. And that's hard because you're going to tell yourself, well, of course the kid's not in trouble, but your reaction may tell the child that they're in trouble. When your reaction is genuinely what's expected, you're in shock, it's horrible, you're upset. But a 6-year-old may see that as like, oh no, I made mom mad, I made mom sad. So we've got to make sure we've built kind of a system in our homes, in our practices, in our schools, where a child can tell you if they've had touch that they don't like, touch that they know is wrong, they can tell you and they're not going to get in trouble. One thing I do with at least my kids on probation, no sleepovers. kids in my own personal life, no sleepovers. I tried to count up the other day when I was getting ready for this. About half of my cases are sibling cases, sibling on sibling, and about a quarter are cousin on cousin. So cousin sleepovers, it can happen. It can lead to child on child sexual abuse. Gender doesn't really matter when it comes to children and problematic sexual behavior. Just because a boy offends on his little brother, that means nothing about his sexuality. All it tells you is what child was available. So don't think, oh, well, if we have all the boy cousins sleep in here and all the girl cousins sleep in here, nothing will happen, because that's not the case. A child with problematic sexual behavior will choose to act out on a child that they believe it will not talk, that won't tell on them, and won't fight them. So it has nothing to do with the child's gender or their relation to the child. They don't think, oh, well, this is my sister, this is gross, I shouldn't do this. They say, well, this is an available child. So I say no sleepovers ever. The one exception is like Christmas Eve, if they all want to sleep in the living room with all the doors open and maybe an adult on the couch. Like, this is one I'm very, very passionate about, just because of what I've seen from my profession. And then just as a note on all this, if you do all this, if you put in all the safety measures you can, horrible things could still happen. So none of this is supposed to be, a guarantee of how to keep your kids safe. This is just how to protect them the best we can. A big thing we can do with kids to help keep them safe is help them have a private space, and then help them enforce the boundaries of their private space. So if you have a 5-year-old going in the bathroom to go potty and she wants to be alone, but the brother wants to go in to brush his teeth, you say, nope, she wants that privacy in her private space, and we're going to respect that privacy. Let children use the bathroom alone. Siblings, I don't think, unless they share the bedroom, should be in the bedroom with the door closed. And that's just, again, more likely than if there's a chance that an adult's going to hear it, a child is less likely to participate in a problematic sexual behavior. Research shows that around age 4, opposite gendered children should stop bathing together, and around age 7, same gendered children should stop bathing together. And that's just so that they can have that feel, not saying that something's going to happen in the bathtub together with 4-year-olds, but it's saying that the child understands that's when they're becoming very aware of their own body and how it's different from that body. And they are being taught that they're allowed to keep their body private. And it helps when the adults are reinforcing their boundaries. From the work I've done, the games that I listed here very often lead to problematic sexual interactions between children. The biggest one being truth or dare. That's how a lot of older kids get younger kids to participate in behaviors that they wouldn't necessarily just go along with in any other situation. Another big one that people don't realize could be problematic is hide and seek. But if you think about it, if the kids are all playing hide and seek, it's normal for you to not see or hear them for a while. And if an older kid is looking for the opportunity to be alone with a younger child, they'll say, well, let's go hide together in the closet. And then that's when the problematic behavior happens, because they know the adults aren't looking for them, because they're supposed to be hiding. So just be aware of what your kids are doing, at the family reunions when everybody's together. I'm not trying to make everybody paranoid, but just aware that this can happen, and it does happen. So how do we make the world safer? Help your child understand that no one should see them naked. So if a cousin says, oh, can you take your underwear off? They say, no one is supposed to see me naked. Help them understand that in some medical situations, a doctor may need to check a part of them or all of them. But in that situation, a parent should be there along with another medical professional. They could have their nurse as a backup. They could have a medical assistant. But in 99% of situations, help children understand that no one ever needs to see them naked. No one ever needs to see their body part. And if they ask to, make sure the child knows they can come tell you that so-and-so asked to see their bottom. Kids do not need to be keeping secrets for anyone. Surprises are great, So, if we have a surprise for mom for Mother's Day, that's fantastic. But if we have a secret for a cousin, that's unacceptable. So just kind of help kids understand that they don't need to keep anybody's secret. That's not their job. And be aware that I know we all try and we do our best and we go and we meet our kids' parents, or sorry, our kids' friends' parents. We see them at pickup. We see them at T-ball. We know who their parents are, but you may not know they have a 16-year-old brother. Or maybe you do know the 16-year-old brother and he's an Eagle Scout and that's great, but he may have his own issues that we don't know about. Or he's having a sleepover the same night that you send your 7-year-old for a sleepover. So then there's a child you don't even know in the home with your child in the home. So we need to do our best to know where the child is, keeping in mind that half of child sexual abuse is perpetrated by another child. Again, under 18 years old. When I say sexual abuse, I'm not talking about the 2 6-year-olds playing doctor. If we go way back and look at what's developmentally, expected, it's expected for kids of similar age groups when they're very young to explore bodies with one another. That's expected developmental behavior. Now we'll redirect the behavior. We'll say, well, that's private. We're not going to do that. We're not going to yell and scream because that's going to put shame into the situation and that could harm the child, but we're going to just say, hey, we're not going to play that game. Let's come have snacks. So when I'm talking about this problematic behavior, that's not what I'm talking about. What I'm talking about is if a child is ages 12 to 17 and they're actively seeking opportunities to interact sexually with a younger child or with a child of their age, but interact in a problematic sexual behavior. That's what I'm talking about here, not the young, fairly innocent sexual exploration. A big thing we can do to help kids stay safe is help them know their own bodies. So starting from a young age, a penis is a penis. If you're uncomfortable with it, work with yourself, work with a therapist, watch a video, say penis 100 times in the mirror. I promise you at this point, it doesn't faze me anymore because I've said it probably 2,000 times professionally. So if you can take the stigma out of the word for yourself, you'll be a lot more ready to take the stigma out of the word for a child. And a big way this can help children is, God forbid, if they are harmed, if someone does hurt them, they'll go to the CJC, they'll have an interview, but this comes directly from one of my cases. A little girl said, oh, he touched my no-no. And the CJC interviewers are great. They'll say, okay, well, what do you use that part for? Or what would a doctor call it? But if the little girl can't say, well, a doctor calls it a vagina, or I use it to go to the bathroom, the little girl didn't know either of those answers. And she just said, he touched my no-no. And everybody knew what had happened. But the defense attorney said, well, she could have meant nose. We don't really know what she meant. She could have meant nose. She could have meant she had an owie that wasn't supposed to be touched, and the case was dismissed. Now, defense attorneys, they're there for a reason, but that one really, he got on my list that day. But understand, if that little girl could have said he touched my vagina, it would have been a very different case. So we've got to help them understand what their body parts are, and then when age appropriate, what other body parts are. And Beyonce, because we love Beyonce. Right, now, what to do if a child reports that they are being abused? And this is whether you're a therapist, a parent, a teacher, anybody interacting with a child. Number one, believe them. Don't question them on it. Don't drill them on it. Say, we'll start with, okay. Help them understand that they're safe. They're not in trouble for telling you. You're going to have big feelings, even if you're a therapist and the child is telling you it's going to kick things up and you're going to feel some things. We've got to stay calm. We've got to not scare the child more by having our own big reaction. Get therapy. Everyone should be in therapy. I'm in therapy because my job is insane. I think all therapists should have a therapist so they can process what it is that they absorb from people all day long. So have your feelings, but if you can, stow them away, deal with the child, and then feel your feelings in an appropriate place. Report it. You do need to report it. I have the reporting statute on here a little bit later and we can go over that. Contact DCFS or police. So when I've reported it before and in all the cases I've worked, if the victim is a child, DCFS and the police, depending on the age of the child with the problematic behavior or the offending child, the police may or may not get involved. So I always call DCFS first, because DCFS will always be involved if there's a victim child. So I've got the DCFS number there for you. I have it in a few other places as well. If the child that was instigating the behavior is 12 or older, 12 is right on the borderline, so it depends on how egregious the behavior was. But 12 or older, the local police will get involved. And if you call police, they'll say, have you called DCFS? So that's why I always just start with DCFS, start there, it's easier. And then there are going to be two investigations that kind of run in tandem. DCFS is going to investigate and the police are going to investigate depending on the age of the children involved. So support the child through the investigation, but don't be involved in the investigation. It's hard. If they come to you and ask questions, answer those questions. If the child wants to tell you everything that happened, that's fine. Let the child talk, just listen, but don't dig into the offense itself. Don't conduct your own investigation, because that could hurt the process down the line. And depending on what the child reports to you, they may need medical assistance. The CJC is a go-to for that. They have nurses that can do, their SANE nurses for children are fantastic. They work so quickly. When I talk to the parents of these kids that have gone to those appointments, they say, I can't believe how fast the medical checkup was. My child wasn't traumatized further by it. They got all the information needed for the police report, and my child just felt like they went to a regular checkup. So if medical help is needed, get that. Some children need STD testing, some need pregnancy testing, so make sure that the child is getting any medical interventions they need.
Sondra, can I
Yeah.
interrupt you for just a minute?
Please do.
Just make a comment because I am at the CJC, and thank you for plugging our medical nurses. They're great. But just also, I mean, yes, there are forensic medicals and things like that for evidence and for different reasons. But also, even just bringing them in, even if it's not for any evidence, just bringing them in helps that child know that they are okay, that they're healthy, their bodies are still working just, like normal. And it can be a real relief. You don't realize how much stress a child might have about that. So don't think that oh, well, there's no evidence, so we don't need it. Just so people know that that's always available, even if it's just to check and let that child know they're okay. So.
Conference I was at, there was a juvenile SANE nurse, so that's the sexual abuse nurse examination. And she said, even kids that you might not think need to see a doctor, it may be good for them. And she was talking about a 7-year-old boy that she did an exam on. And really for him, it was mostly just talking. But she was able to ask him, is there anything you need that you're worried about? Is there anything you want to ask me? And he said, am I pregnant? And that's something as adults, we would never, we're like, he's a 7-year-old boy. Obviously he's not pregnant. We don't need a pregnancy test. But for him, he was just learning how babies are made, and it happens when grown-ups do things that he has participated in. And so for the 7-year-old boy, the only way he could have that huge mental weight of what if I'm pregnant, the only way he could have that mental weight lifted was by going to the doctor, and the doctor able to say, no, you're not pregnant. Everything's okay. We've checked you medically. You're fine. You're not pregnant. Now, obviously later on, he'll need to have conversations that help, explain certain processes to him, but only because he had that medical exam, and it was barely medical. It was more just conversation with a doctor. But it was able to at least ease some of the fears that young victim had. So lean on the CJC, use any resources they have available to you. They're fantastic. As we move forward, DCFS is going to put in a safety plan. The CJC may give you ideas for a safety plan. Probation, if they're involved, will definitely give you a safety plan. A big thing when you're doing a safety plan is do not make it the victim's job to keep themselves safe. So a lot of times I'll see, in the initial plan, it'll say, well, victim will lock her door at night, or victim won't blah, blah, blah. We never want to be, it's the victim's responsibility to keep themselves safe. We're going to put the safety on the shoulders of the parents in the home, So and then if both children are still living in the home, we're going to put it on the older child, the offending child. So we're going to put an alarm on their door. Now, if the victim asks for an alarm on their door, absolutely, we give it to them. We give them what they ask to feel safe in their home again. And if anybody needs to be moved out of the home, we do not disrupt the victim. We move the other child. Even though it may be easier, because if you've got a 13-year-old that you need to move, well, now we know we can't put him anywhere where there's children. There's usually not a lot of places that there are no children. And it'd be a lot easier to move his little sister over to Aunt's house for a little while. But we don't displace the victim ever, because that makes them feel more responsible for what happened to them. Make sure you're utilizing resources for everyone involved. Like I said, the parents are going to have their feelings. The victim's going to have their feelings. A lot of time, older siblings, sometimes younger siblings if they know what's going on, but I've had a lot of cases where older brothers, and this is, I'm sure older sisters too, but just what I've seen is the older brothers are devastated. They felt some sort of responsibility for their younger sibling, and they feel like they failed a younger sibling. We need to make sure everyone involved in that kid's life is getting the resources they need. CJC has groups for the kids, for their siblings, for the parents, but also look at individual therapy if needed. Make sure everybody has an outlet to talk about what's going on in that situation. Now, what if you're working with a child who is the one participating in the behavior, the one driving the behavior, what we would call the offending child? Like when we're talking about that 11-year-old that's doing a lot of pornography, first step we've got to do is breathe. Because yes, that's an alarming behavior, but we've got to just try and relax, not overreact to the child. Let's not make the situation worse. If you have a child that has touched another child, that has done something that could be considered illegal, if they're, old enough, if they're 12 or older, call law enforcement. I would just call your non-emergency line. I'm always really impressed when I'm reading a police report and the reporting party is the parent of that child. When a mom caught her son doing something and called the police herself, that lets me know that she made a very tough decision, but she's making the right decision for everybody involved. So get law enforcement involved, because they're going to end up there anyways. So with them. If necessary, depending on the severity of the behaviors involved, depending on the length of time that this behavior has been going on, depending on the victim's reaction to the situation, you may need to separate the child. I would say less than a quarter of my cases, at least for part of the case, we remove the offending child from the home. We put them in a kinship placement. A lot of them go to grandma and grandpa's, a home where there are no children, where they can at least start their own therapy, gain some skills, make sure that everybody's safe, and then reunite everybody back into the same home. We never remove the child forever. That's never the goal. But if you have a 14-year-old boy who offended on his 8-year-old sister, and there's 4 young sisters in the home, just logistically expecting to watch all those children all the time, it's just not realistic. There's so many victim types in the home, it may be necessary to just remove him for a small amount of time. Cooperate with the investigation, with the legal process. I'm not saying don't use attorneys. Every child has the right to legal defense. If you want an attorney, get an attorney, but cooperate with the process, because it's only going to help everybody in the long run. With the juvenile court, and especially with youth with problematic sexual behavior, the goal is not to sanction just to sanction. We don't sentence kids to jail just because. That's never the goal. The goal is treatment and restitution. And what's fantastic about NOJOS, and this kind of goes into don't give up on the child. What's great about NOJOS is its success rate is as high as 97%. So the recidivism or the reoffense rate of children with problematic sexual behavior is incredibly low. It's the lowest of all the offenses you could have. And most of the time, if these kids are involved in the legal system again, it's for a non-sexual related offense. So they'll have a vandalism or a curfew or one of those regular juvenile offenses. Most kids are not going to reoffend if they get the right treatment. So cooperate with the investigation, cooperate with the legal process. It's the best and fastest way to get them into that treatment. At some point, it will probably be ordered that the child need professional help. where they need a no-dose therapist. Now, if the child is younger, then I don't work with kids. The youngest I've worked with is 11, to be honest. So if the child with the problematic sexual behavior is younger than 11, the police are not going to be involved. It's going to be all DCFS, going to be all CJC. Follow whatever professional kind of direction they give you. They know what they're doing. Utah, unfortunately, through experience, has a very good hold on this situation. We know how to treat problematic sexual behavior in children because we've seen it a lot. So listen to the professionals around you. And one thing just kind of to go along with it, so I thought was really cool is at a conference I was at not too long ago, there was a gentleman there who worked with adult sex offenders in the Utah Department of Corrections. And he did a survey over 11 years. He did a survey of men, adult men in prison, who as children, so as minors, who had a sexual offense as a minor and who went through no-dose. Because he wanted to see what they had to say about why no-dose didn't work or what they wish would have been different. But in those 11 years, only 37 men were in Utah's prison system who had done no-dose as a child. I have 37 right now on my caseload doing no-dose. So thousands of children in Utah do no-dose every year. So for an 11-year period, only 37 of those being convicted of an adult sex offense is an incredible success rate. So understand that if you listen to the professionals involved, if you do what we're asking you to do, and just have patience and breathe through it, everybody's going to get through it. And almost always it's successful in the end for everybody. All right. So for therapists specifically, earlier, if you're not comfortable having these conversations with kids, that's okay. It's good to know what you're good at and what you're not good at. I would be horrible at working with 8-year-olds, and I know that. So I work with teenagers. So know what you're good at, know where your gaps are, and find resources to fill those gaps. So if you're not comfortable with boys or with girls, have someone you could refer them out to. Like I said, get comfortable with the uncomfortable conversation. Literally, if you need to, talk to another adult in your life, have these conversations with the adults in your life about how to talk about sex, how to talk about masturbation, talk about masturbation with your friends, get comfortable being uncomfortable. Use the resources out there. So a really, really great resource is that nodose.net website. It's going to explain to you all the different levels of no-dose. It's got the list of all the no-dose therapists. One thing, and I'll go over it on the next slide, it's got kind of a screener to see, does this kid need intense no-dose services, or is this mild behavior that I could fix in my office? So use the resources they have. Use the CJC's resources. They've got everything you could need for the victims and families. I have run into some parents, even some therapists in other cases that struggle because a child's victimization triggers their own personal history of victimization. So be aware that if you have your own history, it could be triggered if you're working with kids who are going through the same thing. So know when to call in for help. Know when you need to report it. The code is there. We'll go over that. We kind of talked a little bit about how to talk to a client's family. So if you're working with teenagers, how to talk to their families when the values don't match your own values. So maybe your values are abstinence only, or maybe your values are whatever is developmentally appropriate is okay. Understand that the family may not have the same value you do, and understand what you're okay working with and what you're okay not working with. If a family comes to you and they say, I want my child to abstain from everything only, and that's the only thing that's acceptable. If you can't work with that, know that and refer them out. If you want, you can try and take the opportunity to talk about, why shame and fear-based doesn't work, but know what you're capable of and what you're not capable of as a practitioner. If you're not comfortable, or if the parents aren't comfortable having that conversation, make sure the parents are okay with you having that conversation, or if they can suggest another adult that the child can talk to. Like I said, you can remind them that in Utah, the #1 sex education tool for teenagers is pornography. We have to fix that. It needs to be the adults in the children's lives. So we've got to help them find adults they can talk to. And understand this is not a one and done conversation with the child. They'll have the first conversation, they're going to be mortified, you're going to be mortified, and then you'll go your separate ways. And then the kid might be like, oh, I wonder if this means this. I wonder if I could do this though. And a lot of the times the kid isn't going to come and ask you that. So maybe a week later, just say, hey, did anything come up? Do you have questions about what we talked about? Does anything not make sense? Did anything make you uncomfortable? My poor nephews, I had the same talk with them weekly, daily for years, and now they regurgitate it back to me, but it's fine because if they are overeducated on consent, it's better than undereducated. So understand this is not a one and done conversation. This is the screener. I know it's really, really small on here. It's on the NOJOS website. So this is if you're working with kids under the age of 12. Is their behavior problematic? Is it to the point where we need legal intervention, or, well, rarely legal at 12, but serious therapeutic intervention, or is it fine? So you're going to go through this chart. Are they doing this behavior by themselves or with others? Are they harming people? Is it compulsive? Is it adult-like? This isn't meant as a standalone tool. It's got to be used with, it's called the decision tree tool. They're both on the NOJOS website. And there's like an hour-long video of Wayne Arner. He's Mr. NOJOS. And he kind of created this screener. But he does a video of how to use the screener and the decision tree tool. And he can help you walk you through this, where basically as a clinician, you can go through and say, okay, these are the behaviors I'm seeing in the child. Do we need a more intensive evaluation, a full-on sexual behavior risk assessment, or do we just need, a little bit of sexual education? And then there's a screener for kids age 12 and older, of what's okay, what's not okay, what needs some serious intervention at 12 years older, what needs, to be reported to law enforcement, and so on. But this screener is fantastic for therapists. It's fairly new. It's only a couple years old, but it really, really helps therapists who aren't NOJOS specific kind of know how deep into the NOJOS world you need to go with a kid with problematic sexual behavior. What do you have to report? If you're here and you are not a clergy or an attorney, you have to report any suspected abuse, any suspected or reported abuse. Because it says if an individual, it doesn't say, a professional, it says an individual. So that's an adult. If you have reason to believe the child is being harmed or have seen it, behavior that could reasonably result in abuse, you must report it. Now, as a therapist, I would just recommend educating, the parents and the client. Just say, hey, just so you know, the law says I have to report this. It's going to be reported. Giving them the heads up ahead of time can just help them from coming screaming into your office later saying, I didn't know you were going to tell on this. As a therapist, if the allegation is being investigated, try not to dig during session. Obviously, if a victim child wants to tell you what happened to them, we're not going to stop them and say, don't talk about that, because that would cause shame. But we just listen, we say, okay, we listen and we don't judge. We say, okay, all right, well, are you feeling safe? We can talk about things like that, but don't question what behaviors happened, things like that, because it could influence an investigation. And one of the questions in the CJC interview is, did anyone tell you what to say today? We never want them to say, yeah, my therapist, because even if you just said, tell the truth, the child may not fully disclose, my therapist told me to come and be honest. They may just say, yeah, my therapist told me to come and tell you. So we've got to be careful to not influence the investigation. Especially juvenile defense attorneys are pretty good. Some of the adult defense attorneys will do anything to get their client out of trouble, and use anything they can. So let's not give them anything to ruin the investigation. Another thing to be aware of is even if the event happened 5, 6, 7 years ago, and you've got a girl in therapy, she's 13, and she's just now telling you, hey, when I was 5, my older brother did this. Even though the older brother may be out of the home, maybe an adult, still report it. She still needs services. She could still qualify for services or funding under the Utah Office for Victims of Crime. If the perpetrator is under 21, the juvenile courts can still get involved and require them to complete no-dose work. So everybody involved, no matter how long ago the abuse was, everyone involved still needs interventions. So report even, we call it delayed reports, even report the delayed reports because those children are still affected by what happened and they still need help for what happened. I'm gonna take a drink. Are there any questions while I'm doing that?
There's a couple in the Q&A. The first one is, what qualifies for a child of a similar age? What age gap does it become problematic for children to look at or touch other children?
What they look at is like 2 to 3 years. So if a 4-year-old is with a 6-year-old, that's not a vast age discrepancy. If a 4-year-old is with a 10-year-old, that's a vast age discrepancy. And I'm glad you brought this up because I forgot to mention, because we're seeing a lot more of this now. Children with autism are very different. Their sexual development is very different. So this is not for anything we've talked about what's normal, what's not normal, doesn't apply to children with autism. I've got a lot of those kids on my caseload because their bodies are developing faster than their minds. They usually hang out with younger kids. So you've got a lot of those kids at 14 hanging out with 7-year-olds. And yes, maybe the mental gap isn't that big, but the age gap and the development gap is that big. So when they participate in those show me yours, I'll show you mine games together, it falls out of the innocent category. Even though mentally it may still be there, it falls out of it. So you kind of want to look at kids who are in the same developmental space. You know, is a preteen the same as a 6-year-old? No. So just, I would say within a couple grades of each other is about as far as that would be something that's expected.
Okay, one more. I have an 8-year-old client who refers to his privates as his no-no spot. Is it appropriate to correct him to call it his penis, or does this overstep my bounds as his school-based therapist? His mom is not very responsive to me, so I have limited contact with her.
School-based, I know that's tricky because I know school officials have different laws about what they can and cannot talk to kids, but I don't know if I'd consider that sex ed because I know a lot of the laws are surrounding sex ed. So I don't know if I'd consider anatomical terms to be sex ed. I'll give you 2 answers. My personal answer, I would say tell the child it's his penis. My professional and cover my own butt answer would be talk to your district leadership and find out what you're legally allowed to do. That would be my best advice on that one. If you're legally allowed to tell them it's a penis, that's what I would do. But I know the laws are a little bit different for school professionals. So if that would preclude you, I guess just work on, that'd be the best I could give you on that one.
But it wouldn't prevent this person to just calling it the penis. I mean, you know, they don't.
Right, you could call it a
You
penis.
can
You don't
call
have
it
to,
that, you know?
yeah, you can say your penis. You don't have to say to him, that is a penis. You could say,
Right.
oh, okay, the penis. And that way you're not teaching him what to say or not to say. You're just using correct terms. And I don't think there's anything legally sticky about you using correct terms. Ooh, somebody put in there, I think, the code for a teacher. Okay, for teachers too. So we'll get back in there real quick. All right, so just to wrap up, kind of a how do we talk to the kids about it? Like I've said a million times, it's going to be uncomfortable. Be ready for that. Be open to that. If it's in your own home and you're watching a movie and you fast forward because it's getting hot and heavy, don't just sit in awkward silence and like side eye each other and be like, oh my God. Just ask your kid, hey, do you know why we're skipping this? Do you know why you probably shouldn't be spending all your time looking at things like this? Look for opportunities. If you see billboards that are uncomfortable, talk about it. Especially if you drive through Vegas, that's a great way to open up the door to have, sex education conversations. But know the kid you're working with. The conversation with a 5-year-old is going to be different than with a 15-year-old. And the conversation is going to be different with a neurotypical 15-year-old than with a 15-year-old with autism. So know the child you're working with, know the age you're working with, and be appropriate. If we're wanting a child, teen, juvenile, anything, to abstain from a behavior, especially teenagers, you must give them a why. I know we think of like the kids that are in the why phase as like toddlers. They're like, why? It doesn't stop. The kids just stop saying it out loud. So if you tell kids don't look at porn, in their head, they're gonna be like, why? But they're not gonna ask you. So tell them porn can be harmful to you because. And I tell my boys, it doesn't demonstrate real relationships. It doesn't demonstrate consent. It's going to give you false hopes of what a girl's really like romantically. It doesn't demonstrate safe sex. It doesn't demonstrate, a million different things. So tell the child why or how the behavior could be detrimental to them, instead of just, the old South Park, drugs are bad. Okay. That's not going to work for the kid. You've got to give them the why. Give them resources. If you're not comfortable having the conversation, go onto YouTube. I've got some resources on the end that are videos you can watch with your kid, and just push play and sit next to your child and then be ready for questions. Also, if you're promoting abstinence, that's great, but understand kids need to know how to have resources. If a kid needs condoms, needs to get tested, we've got to let them know that they can tell us that they can ask for help when they need it. So make sure they have resources. Now, and that depends, that's going to be different for everybody. I have a box of condoms in my living room for my nephews. I know some people aren't comfortable with that. So at least say in an emergency, 7-Eleven has condoms. So just make sure a kid understands resources, no matter what your goals are. The main thing that I talk about is consent. Even if we're telling our kids don't have sex until marriage, even if we're saying, don't participate in any activities with other, kids, make sure consent is the number one thing we teach. In both directions. They can say no to any contact. They also must get a yes before any contact occurs. A big thing that happens around here is things will happen without a child's consent and they feel like they're in trouble. So let them know that if something happens without consent, they're not in trouble. Someone else violated their boundaries, broke their consent, they can get help. A lot of kids get into trouble with what I call perceived or passive consent. So a lot of teenage boys, I think, have perceived consent. If she didn't say no, they think it's consent, or she didn't physically fight. So that's kind of what I call perceived consent or passive consent, where she didn't really do anything. But for adults, we'd be like, well, that's clearly not consent. But for them, they're like, well, she didn't say no. So we've got to help them understand that there are levels of consent. Pressured or coercive consent is also not consent. Now, Utah law is a little bit shifty, and they just, as long as there's not a no, then they could argue consent. But pressured consent, where they say, come on, please, we're almost seniors, please, oh my gosh, I'm the only one of my friends, please. If she finally breaks down and says yes, that's not real consent. Or, well, if you love me, you would do it. That's not real consent. What I talk about when I talk about consent with kids is affirmative consent is great. That's an affirmative, an out loud yes. But I teach enthusiastic consent because it can never be confused. So I love this wheel. I have it on my resources page. It's a fun little wheel. You play with kids, you spin it, and then the kid, it's a great way to find out what teens know or don't know about consent. Because a lot of this, they'll say, yeah, like if a girl says maybe later, they'll be like, yeah, that sounds like consent. No, affirmative consent is a hot diggity, a yes, please. So we've got to be teaching kids some enthusiastic consent. On that line, we have the following video that is great when it comes to teaching kids consent. It talks about tea, which is British, and I've had kids be smart alecks about that and be like, well, I don't drink tea. So any food or beverage item could be replaced for tea and used to teach kids about consent. So we'll play this and then we're about there.
If you're still struggling with consent, just imagine instead of initiating sex, you're making them a cup of tea. You say, hey, would you like a cup of tea? And they go, oh my God, I would love a cup of tea, thank you. Then you know they want a cup of tea. If you say, hey, would you like a cup of tea? And they're like, I'm not really sure. Then you can make them a cup of tea, or not, but be aware that they might not drink it. And if they don't drink it, then and this is the important bit, don't make them drink it. Just because you made it doesn't mean you're entitled to watch them drink it. And if they say, no thank you, then don't make them tea. At all. Just don't make them tea. Don't make them drink tea, don't get annoyed at them for not wanting tea. They just don't want tea, okay? They might say, yes please, that's kind of you. And then when the tea arrives, they actually don't want the tea at all. Sure, that's kind of annoying as you've gone to all the effort of making the tea, but they remain under no obligation to drink the tea. They did want tea, now they don't. Some people change their mind in the time it takes to boil the kettle, brew the tea, and add the milk. And it's okay for people to change their mind, and you are still not entitled to watch them drink it. And if they're unconscious, don't make them tea. Unconscious people don't want tea, and they can't answer the question, do you want tea? Because they're unconscious. Okay, maybe they were conscious when you asked them if they wanted tea, and they said yes, but in the time it took you to boil the kettle or brew the tea and add the milk, they are now unconscious. You should just put the tea down, make sure the unconscious person is safe, and this is the important part again, don't make them drink the tea. They said yes then, sure, but unconscious people don't want tea. If someone said yes to tea, started drinking it, and then passed out before they'd finished it, don't keep on pouring it down their throat. Take the tea away. Make sure they are safe, because unconscious people don't want tea. Trust me on this. If someone said yes to tea around your house last Saturday, that doesn't mean they want you to make them tea all the time. They don't want you to come around to their place unexpectedly and make them tea and force them to drink it, going, but you wanted tea last week, or to wake up to find you pouring tea down their throat going, but you wanted tea last night? If you can understand how completely ludicrous it is to force people to have tea when they don't want tea, and you are able to understand when people don't want tea, then how hard is it to understand when it comes to sex? Whether it's tea or sex, consent is everything. And on that note, I'm going to make myself a cup of tea.
All right, so I know we're right at the end. Are there any questions from that last section or overall? Or I'll throw up here, here's all the resources that are going to come out for you guys to use. And then here's my cell phone. I'm usually involved in something, so if you call, I'll just be honest, I'm not going to answer, but if you shoot me a text, I'll see it that way. So you can ask, if you have a question that you don't want to ask out loud or anything like that, feel free to link up with me this way. If you're offended by anything I said, please let me know, because I'd like to know how to, I know this is a very touchy subject, no jokes intended, but I'd like to know the best way to get this information to people in this community to make it the most effective. So if there's anything that was problematic for you, let me know. I'd like to hear it so I could improve. But any other questions?
I'm not seeing questions except for wanting the link to that video. You can just Google the consent of tea or the tea consent. It will come up. It's easy to find.
And there's a clean one and a not clean one.
Yes.
So just be aware of that too.
Yes.
And then if you look here on, I believe my slides are going to be available soon, but if you look right here, this is the consent video, this long one right here.
Oh, there we go.
That's the consent video. We have our wheel of consent. The Utah Parent Center has great resources on how to talk to kids about sex, how to talk to parents to talk to kids about sex. I love this Roblox YouTube video. It is a 10-minute step-by-step how to make Roblox as safe as possible to have in your home. I'd highly recommend that if you have Roblox in your home. But all these resources will come out to you guys.
Awesome. Oh, wow, I got a weird thing going on where I can't see you anymore. Hold on.
Well, I can stop sharing. That might help too.
Well, I just, no, this is weird. Let me. Anyway, well, hopefully you guys are still seeing everything, because mine just kind of went weird on me, but I didn't see any questions, but I do want to thank you, Sondra. I mean, there's lots of love in the chat for you.
Cool.
And we so appreciate. Are you still hearing me?
I'm still hearing you, Kelly.
Okay.
It looks like people
This
are
is
wanting my
weird.
resources slide back up, so I'll just share that and
Yes.
what people can leave on, but these
This is
will
weird.
go out, is that right?
What's that?
The slides will go out, right?
Yes. So
Okay.
that was what I was going to remind everybody. So we will send the slides out with the certificate. If you don't need those CEUs and you're not going to be filling the evaluation out, just shoot me an email and I will get those slides sent to you. And so that's kind of what we do is we just send them out, you know, with the people who are soliciting certificates, but I absolutely can send them to you. You'll see in the chat, my email's in the chat, and most of you are getting flyers from me. And so yeah, just let me know and I'll get those sent to you. So, but thank you. Oh my gosh, this is just so amazing. Every time you come, Sondra, it's just absolutely amazing. And we appreciate your expertise and the information that you share and just your enthusiasm for this work and the importance of it. And so thank you so much. We appreciate you being here.
Thank you, guys. I'll leave this up for a little bit. And I'm gonna head off to go to court to deal with some of this.
Awesome. Yes, we will leave this up for a little bit longer so you guys can grab that link, and hopefully you can join us next month and we'll have another wonderful presenter. So have a great day, everybody.
Also, for everyone who is submitting, you won't receive an email confirmation. You just hit submit, and that's what you're gonna get that it's been submitted. Just kind of remind you for that. Thank you.
Thanks, Gabby.